We want to call to order the 1 p.m. Thursday, March the 22nd, 2020 work session of the Henrico County Public Schools. The first item on our agenda is the approval of remote participation by a board member. I'd like to note that Ms. Ogborn's absence today. She previously notified the board of her desire and need to participate in today's work session remotely. Our school board policy P2-04-006, electronic participation in meetings from remote locations, requires a majority vote of the board members present at the primary or central meeting location to approve a board member's remote participation. In accordance with this policy, do I hear a motion to approve Ms. Ogborn's remote participation in today's work session?
So moved.
It has been moved by Mrs. Shea. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Atkins. The motion is passed. Next on our agenda, we want to welcome Ms. Ogborn by telecommunications. So good to see your face.
Hi, everybody.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of our agenda. Can I entertain, please, a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Been moved by Mrs. Kinsella. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Shea. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? The ayes have it. The agenda is approved. The first item on our agenda is we are all conscious and cognizant of the current condition of our world and community as it relates to COVID-19 and the coronavirus. So we want to first and foremost begin by hearing a state of emergency regarding COVID-19. I'm going to ask that our superintendent, Dr. Amy Cashwell, will begin this conversation, and then if she so desires, Dr. Beth Tigan will participate as well, and then the board members, we can have an opportunity to discuss and ask our superintendent questions as we see fit. Dr. Cashwell.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. First, I'd like to begin with sharing my gratitude to this board for your outstanding leadership throughout this clearly unprecedented situation, and the manner in which this board has led with the constant care and concern of our staff, students, and community. Has been most appreciated, and certainly, you know, along with the leadership team and your leadership, I feel confident that we have left no stone unturned when it comes to thinking of ways to best serve our staff and community. And so your continued commitment in that endeavor is appreciated. So thank you to this board. And I'd also like to express gratitude, and I know I've done so in a number of ways, but want to continue to offer gratitude to the entire staff and teams who have worked tirelessly to take care of the community's needs. And so while that's most apparent through things that you can see with our community feeding endeavors and certainly some of the efforts to get our facilities clean, but all the things that are not seen are as easily seen behind the scenes with staff who are working virtually and in remote locations to keep the system running and make sure that we're taking care of our employees when it comes to payroll and those sorts of things. So those operations continue, and so to the entire Henrico staff team, again, continued gratitude. And then to our families and our students and the community at large, I want to express my gratitude for your patience during this situation as it is so rapidly changing and unfolding. We certainly endeavor to keep you informed and abreast of any information as we have it, but we recognize that based on the unusual nature of the situation and the rapid nature at which things change, that can be a challenge, keeping everybody up to date. So I'd like to remind our public that we do have a website that has the most up-to-date information, and we're trying to keep that information in a concise location and update that one document, that Q&A document that's been out there. And as we're communicating to our staff and families, providing updates, we're linking you right back to that document. So that's a good source of information when you're looking for the most up-to-date relevant information. You can find it there. And we'll continue to update that document as things unfold. But again, your patience and understanding has been most appreciated as we work to make sure that we're making decisions carefully and thoughtfully with the best interest of all in mind. So I'm going to stop my remarks for there and at this point and ask Dr. Beth Tigan to come forward. She's going to provide an update for the board related to the efforts that have been ongoing that we've been engaged in partnership with our community government. So while I mentioned a brief overview of the things that are happening internally and with the Henrico Schools team, this is also a joint effort with our partners across the region in the Richmond metro area when it comes to emergency response management and how some of that's being handled with our government partners. And so she's had the opportunity to serve as a liaison in some of those meetings. And so she's going to update you on that effort, as well as a number of ways that Henrico County has been engaged in regards to the community response. Dr. Tigan?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Cashwell. It's hard to believe it's only been 2 weeks since we were here at this same venue. It almost seems like a lifetime ago at this point. Dr. Cashwell did ask that I represent the Henrico County Public Schools as the branch director for schools on the the Henrico's Emergency Operations Center team. And I have witnessed wonderful collaboration over the last few weeks between the county and the schools, and really demonstrates our value as one Henrico. The police department has been providing SROs to each of our feeding sites each day, Monday through Friday. And they've also, when they closed down their cafeteria functions at the Western Henrico complex, they provided those workers to us to help with our food service for our students. And the schools have also been supporting our colleagues on the Henrico County side, because we have provided thermometers to our first responders so that they can use them in their daily work. We have supplied N95 masks that we had in some of our ACE Center programs, as well as regular surgical masks, gowns, safety goggles, and our ultraviolet sterilization cabinets for those safety goggles to help bridge the gap of where there's a that the supply is not meeting the demand for personal protective equipment. We've also collaborated with VCU to determine if our ultraviolet sterilization units can be used to sterilize those N95 masks that are in such high demand. That work is ongoing, and we hope to hear something soon, because we know that's something we have in each one of our schools. We have them in our elementary schools, as well as 4 to 6 units in each of our secondary schools. I would like to say that this idea was brought forward to our science specialist from one of our science teachers, because her husband is a nurse. And so this has been an exciting time, because this could be a game changer, not only for Henrico, but for the region and the state. We have supported Henrico's 911 call center and the Virginia Department of Health call center with our nurses. We have connected 27 students from Godwin's Todd Allen Phillips Center for the Medical Sciences to work directly with a GIS analyst from the county as they're continuing to look at resources on the web and social media to do data mining and looking for trends that will help us keep ahead of the curve. And I know Ms. Shea has been involved in that as well. So we have truly taken a proactive approach within the county to addressing our concerns. I also represent schools as a part of the Unified Command, which is the larger group that represents the region. And that's the main focus for schools has truly been on addressing the food insecurity needs of our families. Family and community engagement directors, school nutrition directors, the Education Foundation leaders, and the social services directors are all involved in trying to determine the best way to continue to meet the needs of our families for those weekend food packs and continuity of feeding for our students and their families. Chris Sorensen, Mike Taylor, and Monica Callahan-Smith, along with Monica Manns, have helped to lead this work. And on Monday, the governor asked that public schools partner with private daycare providers to help create a solution regarding childcare for essential workers, such as our emergency responders and those in healthcare. And I'm excited to share that we are collaborating with the YMCA as well as the Henrico Education Foundation to support their efforts. We anticipate that they will be using the schools that they've used previously in the division as the need becomes greater than what they have right now. I know YMCA set up 5 daycare centers this week, and depending on need, they know we're ready to assist with the expansion in the next week or two. And we will work with the Henrico Education Foundation that has provided after school care for students. They have the ability to come in and set up full daycare as well. And so we're poised, ready to help them as well. So as you can see, collaboration has truly been the theme that has permeated these last few weeks. And it's a proud moment for Henrico County, and particularly, I think, for Henrico County Public Schools. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Castro. Thank you, Dr. Tigan. Ms. Ogborn, can you hear me? Ms. Ogborn?
No questions, thank you.
Mrs. Kinsella?
I have a question about how we're identifying the needs or the gaps that still exist in our communities, in our school communities.
For food?
For food, yes.
First of all, we have our list of families that we know that we take care of on a routine basis. And so family engagement has really pulled those names together. We've also reached out to school counselors because we know that the number of families that may need help is likely to increase as income decreases, as businesses close and so on. So we're relying on our school counselors. We're also relying heavily on the Department of Social Services to help us identify those students and to be partners in providing food for those families.
And if I might add to that, just in your response, and Dr. Tigan alluded to this, one of the gaps we know is that even beyond school breakfast and lunch, we have students who continue to be in need, whether it's through the weekend, families experiencing more food insecurity with unemployment rising and those sorts of things. And so we want to make sure that we are partnering with the community to fill in those gaps beyond school breakfast and lunch, though we continue to be positioned to provide that as we have been. We know that we have heard there is information soon forthcoming from DSS related to EBT cards that will be provided to families. And the idea is that, again, by providing some assistance for families to take care of their needs, there may be also less need for lots of individuals to be outgoing to feeding locations so that we can continue to keep with social distancing as has been recommended. And so the efforts have been tremendous, and Beth highlighted some of those, but just on a number of fronts at bringing all of those resources together in a manner that provides our community folks with food insecurity needs much more than the school breakfast and lunch alone can provide.
Ms. Shea?
First of all, I just want to say how incredibly proud I am to be part of the Henrico team and just the tremendous leadership of Dr. Cashwell during this time and the division leadership team. Beth, thank you for your leadership on the Emergency Operations Center. I am so pleased to hear about these innovative ways that Henrico has looked into how to fill the gaps for the community. I would love if we could have an update on where instruction stands, particularly opportunities for our students to continue to engage academically, but also how do we do that in an equitable manner for our students and a safe way for our staff.
That's a great question, and I anticipate there are some topics that we didn't yet cover, but I'll take, that I plan to address after we answered questions related to the topics Dr. Tigan shared, but I'll just launch into that as sort of an instructional overview and hopefully answer your questions. So at the onset of our closure, what we wanted to do was provide our students, all of our students, an opportunity to continue to engage in content that had previously been learned. And so we did that through virtual options, both paper, pencil, and electronic, with our central team doing the bulk of the heavy lifting, but teachers absolutely rallying to make sure students went home with activities and links and resources that they could engage in as they're able. And so we understand that this is a stressful time for our families, and there's certainly not an obligation or a requirement that students take advantage of these opportunities, but we know it's in their best interest that they maintain that engagement. And so our teachers, at the very least, are going above and beyond just to make sure students feel a connection to school, to their classroom, whether it's phone calls, virtual meetings, checking in on families. That the most important thing we can do now is make sure that we're providing some consistency for students who have lost what they've counted on in the school day, and that is those caring connections with the adults in the building, their teachers and beyond. So keeping those alive and well has been a top priority, and our staff has come through in amazing creative ways in keeping true to that, meeting those social emotional needs as we can from afar. Now that we know we're entering a situation of a longer-term closure, we'll be pivoting our efforts to make sure that we position ourselves to take care of gaps or loss of learning that will have accumulated over this extended period of closure. And so knowing that equity and access continue to be a concern, any plans that we put forth going forward to fill those learning gaps will be multifaceted. So, again, and while we've not made any formal announcement related to these plans, I can give you an example, an overview of the kinds of things that we're exploring. So new instruction is not occurring now. Schools are closed. We have those options for families to take advantage of. It's wonderful that a number of our students are doing so. They're remaining engaged, reviewing their content, but we want to be able to, at some point, provide options virtually that will allow students to pick up with learning once more, but also recognize that's not going to be the best option for all students. We may have made sure that they have a Wi-Fi hotspot and a laptop computer, but we have siblings caring for other siblings because parents are working night shifts and overnight shifts and double shifts in hospitals, first responders. We know that every student's needs cannot be met virtually, even with all of the right materials and equipment. So we want to make sure we have a number of options available. So while we might start during this period of closure with some virtual options, once we reach sort of that end of the school year period that enters summer, we'll begin some rolling face-to-face options and some rolling virtual options that will allow students to re-engage and catch up and close those gaps in learning that may have occurred during our closure, as well as being mindful particularly of our younger students at the elementary level and students who were transitioning, let's say, from elementary to middle, right? Fifth graders who were saying, I'll never step in my elementary school again after I left. I'm going to be in middle school, or middle schoolers who are transitioning to high school, to offer some creative ways for them to come back together in the summer, summer school, summer camp style, even if it's for partial days, to do some things that will reconnect them to their school communities and prepare to launch them into the next school year. So lots of plans being developed that we'll look forward to communicating as they're firmed up, but we recognize that there is not one plan that will meet everyone's needs. So we want there to be multiple entry points, multiple options that will work best for our families and students during this time. And some of it will be ongoing. It may be that we have individuals who can't take advantage of virtual options for any number of reasons, or they aren't able to engage in some of our face-to-face summer opportunities. So we know it's our responsibility once that school year starts to have a plan to address their needs and remediate students and fill in gaps throughout the school year. And we're prepared to be creative about the way we deliver instruction in that manner as well. So You know, again, I think as unfortunate as this situation has been, seeing the Virginia Department of Education come through with waivers that allow us to eliminate the need for end-of-course tests through the SOLs, leaving some local flexibility. It offers us a prime opportunity to put in place some practices that we've always known were best for kids around performance assessment and using the local options to assess students on mastery. And so we plan to do all of those things. And we'll look forward to, as those plans are firming up, sharing those. I will share for this board an action you can expect we may need to take in the future. I'll likely be coming to you related to some of our local policies that may need to be suspended. And I say may because this is still unfolding as we go forward. So while at the state level we'll see that there are some requirements waived, we may need to look to our local policy. And we've already begun to do that as there are some policies currently in place. So P7-09-004 that deals with graduation requirements, P7-13-003, length of class period. Some of those I may be asking for you to suspend those through this period so that we can move forward with plans as the VDOE is intending with their waivers. There's still a number of actions that are out of VDOE's hands and are in the General Assembly's hands. So those are still ongoing. There'll be a special session with General Assembly to take action on some of the pieces of these waivers that are still outstanding. So that's something you could expect in mid to late April. I'd be coming back to you with the potential of needing to take some action there. And it may be that these state and VDOE related actions will not necessitate that, but that's certainly something we're keeping an eye on and how that will affect anything we may have in place locally. So I think that was a lot of information to answer a shorter question related to instruction, but certainly it's under development, lots to consider as it comes to policy. Thrilled to see a lot of flexibility from our VDOE, and that's allowing us to put into place and create a plan that I think will best meet the needs of every single student. Yeah.
Hold on, Ms. Max, give me 1 second. Does that answer your question, Marcy?
Yeah, that's great.
Before we speak to Ms. Atkins, Ms. Ogborn wants to just ask a follow-up question for instruction. Ms. Ogborn?
I did. Thank you, Reverend Cooper. Basically, the feedback I'm getting from parents is it touches on several topics and related to instruction, all of them. I know that parents want their kids to continue to be educated, and that's the main message. But they're concerned about end-of-the-course requirements and how that might affect them moving on to college. So are we in touch with the colleges? Has that process been started yet? And the second part of it, and I'll let you answer both, is that they're requesting a more clear messaging about requirements, because we've been saying that the work that they have at home is optional, and the feedback I'm getting is if you make it optional, the kids might not do it, but parents want them to. If we could raise that bar of expectation so that now that we know they're not coming back, so that we can incent the kids to do the work that we give them. So that's the colleges and getting that work done.
Absolutely. Great questions, and we're fielding those same questions. And so we're hoping to get some communication out very soon that's clear on the fact that the activities and opportunities that have been provided to date are still not required and are not a part of this grading period. And so we'll have information that's going to come forward as we work through that. And that won't mean that we won't then begin a new period of virtual instruction that does have some requirements to do, as you've shared, Mrs. Ogborn, fill in the gaps that students will need so that we can award locally verified credit. And so while we want our students engaged, we're providing lots of opportunities for our students to remain engaged in the content, and that will only position them for success as we move forward. We have not opened a situation right now where we are beginning new instruction and are assessing it for the record. But we will be entering a period of time in which that's going to be an option for students, and particularly those who we're looking to award locally verified credit. Now, for seniors going into colleges or just looking to graduate and have their diploma status clear, again, new information, we're still awaiting bits and pieces of it that will come from General Assembly, et cetera, as it relates to some of the requirements. For example, while VDOE has said students on track to graduate, they're waiving end of course SOL tests for those individuals. There are still some outstanding requirements that will need to be waived related to if students hadn't taken their required virtual course, their required CPR, their required economics and personal finance. We know we'll likely need to fill in those gaps before they go. So what we're imagining, and again, we're going to begin to, as we get this clearer, communicate with individual students and families. Our school counseling team is already working on this. Again, still waiting on some critical pieces, though. We'll be in touch with those families directly. The VDOE is positioned to give us some guidance related to transcripts and what the procedure will be in Virginia for public schools to record on transcripts where students have had their end of course requirements waived and are graduated but are still pending to fill in that gap for instruction, which we are responsible for doing and will do, as I said, virtually through the summer and even into the fall. So again, we're waiting on guidance for what that'll look like on the transcript, but I think that may speak to, Mickey, your question you've gotten from some parents about how will colleges know, how will this be denoted. I think given the global situation, there's a heightened awareness on the part of higher ed regarding this unusual situation. And so,
Right.
but there will be a method that will come from VDOE that will allow us to have consistency in Virginia transcripts related to this.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am, Michelle.
Sorry to jump back in. Dr. Cashwell, I just wanted to clarify two points. What I hear you saying is, and my question is, some of our students who are on the bubble for their class on whether they're going to pass or not, are they going to have the opportunity to display academic growth if they're in that bubble in order to get credit for that class? So we have as few students repeating classes and grades as possible. And then kind of secondly, has the VDOE defined what they mean by on track for graduation? Have they specifically dialed that out for us?
No, and rightfully so. I mean, I think each locality is tracking graduation along the way, and so that's something we certainly define, and it has to do with students who have taken or are currently enrolled in courses that would be required to lead to graduation in 2020 and would have been as of March 13th. And so, and again, you could also be on track and that not be true if you were intending to, for example, you aren't currently enrolled in, but you plan to leverage Ingenuity, some of our students who are in unique learning situations, and we're going to make sure all of that can happen for students. So we are literally going to go student by student and make sure that we are providing every opportunity so that a student is not penalized in any way based on this closure in having their gaps met when it comes to meeting requirements. So students who may have been experiencing academic difficulty, providing them opportunities to be remediated and demonstrate mastery, those will come and those will be offered in a number of ways. So we're going to do everything we can, just as we would have during the school year, to get our seniors and those who are slated to graduate and on track now, whether they're on the bubble or not, to fulfill those requirements.
Ms. Atkins?
Thank you. So first and foremost, thank you for all of your work, Dr. Cashwell, this entire board, and our HCPS staff. When it comes to making sure that our children are fed, there is no other greater importance other than life. We have to make sure that our families and that our children eat. And so I'm extremely proud of the efforts that have been taken so far. I did have several questions around food insecurity regarding the collaborative effort that you're having with different entities. One thought that I had was making sure that we reach out to the local nonprofits that are within communities. I think that is the quickest way to get food to our families, along with the larger, like your HEF and other larger foundations. Myself, I've been having several conversations with churches, particularly in the Verona area. We have like the Way, we have the Easton Henrico Fish. And so these are organizations that are asking questions like, how can we help? Can you share a little bit about your conversations that you're having and how you're working collaboratively?
Yes, I can share a little bit. Monica Callahan Smith is on the Unified Command, and she sits on the Emergency Operations Center team. And her role is finding donations and volunteers. And she met earlier this week with faith leaders within Henrico. And so we are reaching out to other faith leaders across the region here and looking at ways that we can use maybe their facilities as distribution sites,
Yes.
their congregation as volunteers, their, to be able to get food in the community to where it's easier access for our families. And so those are some things that have been discussed and continue to be discussed. Hands-on has also been which pulls together many volunteers in the region. They were at our meeting on Wednesday, and they will be there again with others on Friday. And so this is a all hands on deck across not only Henrico, but across the region as far as how can we leverage all of the individuals who normally are providing these services for our families and allowing them to partake in it. And we know that we're dealing with less people want to be out right now, and so we're looking for creative solutions that will work for the social distancing but still meet the needs of our communities. We've also looked at other opportunities where, in addition to the EBT cards, with additional funds that are coming from the federal government, are there ways to maybe do vouchers for our students and their families so that they could use them in their local community to help keep that economic process going so that we don't create more food deserts in some of our neediest areas of the county. And so there's a lot of thoughtfulness about everything that's happening, and it's not, to me it goes beyond the feeding because it maybe all leads back to feeding, but if I can keep a parent employed, that's also going to be positive for our families. And so that's been a real push, and I think you can see that the county has taken that idea and is using it. They started a fundraiser today with people being able to donate for first responders to get meals. And they're really pushing to try to keep our businesses open and not having to close their doors and possibly not be able to reopen them. And so I think you see that across the county.
And just to circle back to what I think was part of the response and Dr. Tigan's response to your question about what can community organizations, churches do, who would they go to? And she mentioned Monica Callahan Smith, and I want to be clear, she's an employee of Henrico County government, not a schools employee. And so those efforts to bring community groups together are spearheaded, again, by county government because they are looking at the broader needs, not just students of the entire community. And so certainly we're plugged into that effort alongside them. But I just wanted to be clear for those, because I think you wanted to be able to point individuals to the right person. And so I want to make it clear she wouldn't be found as a schools employee because we have a Monica also who's engaged in this work and doing similar work. So it would be Monica Callahan Smith with the county who's spearheading bringing those community organizations together. I didn't mean to cut you off for your second question. I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you for the clarification.
No, thank you for that. And so I have several major corporations that are interested in doing that same thing. And so would your guidance be to allow them to go through Henrico County government for that type of, whether it's volunteering, we have a transportation company that's willing to deliver meals. So it sounds like the best guidance from a being organized perspective is to send them to Henrico County government.
Yes, ma'am.
Is
And
that
you can
correct?
send them to the
Okay.
website and they can volunteer. And that information will go to Monica Callahan-Smith.
The community aspect that we're still heavily engaged in is related to our education foundation. So the Henrico Education Foundation initially took in and helped spearhead donations that came in the form of actually non-perishable food, but also monetary donations that could then go towards this effort. They're still actively campaigning for those donations. The Robbins Foundation stepped in and is doing a match. The tremendous amount of funds have been raised, which will be put towards this bigger community effort, whether it comes in the form of eventually, again, vouchers, gift cards that can then be used at local restaurants and businesses to sort of fill in all of those needs we've talked about. But so that's another opportunity for those who may want to be involved or donate, but not necessarily through a broader organization, may choose to visit the HEF website and donate, and monetary donations would go to this cause through that effort.
Fantastic. Those were my only questions regarding food and
Thank you
meals
for your
and
assistance.
donations and all of that. Thank you. And so I did want to also, I had a couple thoughts around COVID-19 and distance learning as well, and I wrote them out just to ensure that I can articulate them as best as possible, particularly in these times. There's so many arms and legs and things moving that there may be some things that are in process or not, but I want to make sure that consideration is given to them. One of the things that I find in conversations with parents and guardians and community in general is really tips on internet safety has really popped up for me this week in virtual learning as our parents are pushing kids to be on their laptops more, not just in the specific areas where they're supposed to, but, you know, individuals are getting all kinds of resources and things to learn online. And so parents have called and said, are there tips on internet safety? Of course, I can Google that, but I want to know from the lens of Henrico County Public Schools what those practices are. So I think we need to give consideration to providing just some helpful tips, whether it's in a newsletter or whatever, on internet safety at each level and for each grade. The other piece of that is for us to consider launching a campaign to help our parents motivate their children to learn. When in school, we have all sorts of motivation, whether it's on the wall, whether it's the music that's played, or the instruction itself. I think as a parent, it'll be great to provide just some tips on motivating children to learn at home, which is very different. So if we can also provide just some sort of, not just tips, but I really would like an entire campaign on that, from marketing materials to continuous reinforcement. The other concern that I really have is around absenteeism and reading. When school was in session, it was certainly an opportunity of improvement for us. I think it becomes bigger as we think about gaps. And so research has shown that individual absenteeism increases the likelihood students will eventually become disengaged or drop out of school. Well, our schools are closed, so we certainly want to make sure we have a keen eye on that. One thought that I had was, if we were in school, we'd have some after-school programs, we'd have art clubs, some other things around character building. I think that we should really explore providing these clubs virtually as a county. So for the art club that is not existing physically right now, I think we have the potential to create this virtual art club for our kids to continue with team skills and character building and just sort of these talents that our beautiful children have, and maybe not have an outlet to do them in. So let's also look at our after-school activities and find ways to allow that and work collaboratively. Let's see what else I have on here. Something that has also popped up in addition to social distancing is social isolation. And so as if an individual does test positive, whether it's an adult or child, they move away from those social distancing to social isolation. And I think we want to take a little bit of time in marketing when we do send out communications to start talking about that, talking about the difference between distancing and isolation, talking about some of the symptoms we may see pop up around depression and anxiety and things of those sort, and how to navigate through these kaleidoscope of emotions as whether it's the parent trying to instill instruction or the teenager themselves, the junior or the senior trying to manage their own emotions around what's happening. And so I really beg that your staff take a look at that because we're going to see a little bit more of social isolation pop up. Let's see what else I have here. Something that I know that we chatted about is around implementing a help desk hotline. That is continuing to be something that I think we really need to take another look at. The mobile hubs are fantastic. It's a way to get, a mobile hotspot or to get your laptop repaired. However, I think we have a great opportunity to provide our families with additional ways to get service. And we can do this with the staff that we currently have based on sort of the org chart that I looked at. I think that it's comforting, specifically in these times where we want to have some sort of traditions and standards. It's truly comforting to know that you can have your question answered with just a phone call away. And so we have families that lack transportation that can't get to the mobile hubs and such. And that's the same situation with meals, right? Trying to find solutions. So we deliver the meals. Well, when it comes to technology, if you can't get to the place to help you, it's nice to pick up the phone. And I think that the majority of families do have phones to do that and receive that service. Something else I was in a conversation with around special education, and it's something that we certainly, I know as a division, is putting a lot of resources into making sure we move forward equitably. I'd like for us to consider implementation, and in some ways we do this, but a larger expansion of teletherapy. I'd like for us to really give a little bit more consideration into using that, as well as teleintervention. It is something that is used in other divisions, and I think we may have an opportunity to use those particular services as well as we look at working virtually. And those are my comments and feedback.
Thank you, all noted, and just would point out that when it comes to the idea of a hotline, we certainly are positioning ourselves as we move forward with, as I said, pivoting from more of the optional engagement to something that'll particularly be more formalized for students throughout the long-term closure, positioning ourselves not just with what would be a tech hotline, but a hotline for help in other ways. So in the past, decades before the internet, there were homework hotlines and those kinds of things, right? So we understand the power of being able to connect to a human and ask questions, and we're certainly exploring options that will do that. The tech, certainly, most of the end result of a phone call is going to be someone's going to have to repair a device face-to-face, but in the interim, anything we could answer via the phone, we'd certainly endeavor to do that. And I think it speaks to questions that folks may have even beyond tech. So we're looking at ways to implement that. In the meantime, I would point out there is a hotline that's open, and we do get questions, schools related through that county hotline that we have advertised, and we take them and we answer them. We continue, and we've let our families know the superintendent email account, others that are out there are still active. They're monitored, anonymous alerts still active, monitored, and so we are providing immediate response to anyone who's expressed any need, concern, questions, those kinds of things. We feel like we've had good open communication even during the closure. Great point about, I think you said internet safety, but digital citizenship is something we work on when school's in session, and we continue to emphasize that, and I've seen some really creative things done during this virtual time, and I think that also speaks to your thoughts related to creativity and all of the, in a time where we're not teaching new instructional material or content, we're doing a lot with what our 6 Cs are, our Henrico Learner Profile. Most of the activities we're pushing out are opportunities for everybody, K-12, to engage in creativity, and we've seen virtual music lessons happening and just opportunities for those who create to do monologues, upload them, share with their peers, choruses who continue to perform, all kinds of opportunities. I think they're limitless during this time, and we'll continue to foster that. And I know individual schools are connecting with their school communities around even school spirit, virtual spirit days and those sorts of things. But points well taken, and I would encourage all of our families, and you mentioned making sure we have resources for parents, and we'll keep creating more of those, but our virtual learning website is the hub for all of that. So we have links broken down for how to meet social emotional needs, how to have hard conversations with kids. Our school counseling team, our team of psychologists, social workers have robust vetted resources there already for our families. We have intent to, as we're have some lulls in our big messaging, to be able to push some of that out to the community as well. But great resources on that page. I encourage all of our families to visit it frequently, and often it is full of ideas of how to motivate your student, what to get them involved in, and we'll keep updating that.
And I do have a few others as you're speaking. Something that I have been really thinking about is around culture. When you're physically in a building, you can get a greater sense of culture, but when you're working virtually or remotely, sometimes it's harder to get a sense of communication culture. And so I think that's also something that we want to take a look at as a division as folks are transitioning from working from brick and mortar to working remotely at home. Let's think about ways that we build sort of this intentional, strong, positive virtual culture, specifically around communication and how we respond. Something else that I thought about as well is developing a process for feedback for our teachers and staff, giving them an opportunity to have an outlet where they can be a part of the development of this culture and sharing their experiences of transitioning from working in one spot to now working virtually. I think there's another opportunity for us to learn as we're on this journey together to create processes. There's some processes that in this temporary new norm may not be applicable, but let's also allow our teachers and staff some sort of outlet or develop a feedback method so that they can share how they're feeling and be a part of this process as we're developing.
Thank you so much, Ms. Atkins. Follow-up question by Ms. Shea.
Yeah, so tagging on with Ms. Atkins, I would love to see specifically some tips on reading instruction to be shared with parents. We know that learning to read is one of the most crucial academic foundations for our early elementary school students. And there's kind of that first hump. And until they get over that first hump without continued instruction, they'll slide back and regress. And so I know I've actually had a lot of parents reach out to me that specifically they want to help their child, you know, their kindergarten, first grader, kind of get over that hump, but they don't have the pedagogical skills. And so just a bullet list about, you know, how to help them chunk words and, you know, the basics on how to help them, more than just reading with your child or having your child read to them, but to really make sure that we don't have a whole grade level of kids sliding back on their reading process. Progress. I think reading instruction tips particularly would be extraordinarily helpful for our early elementary school parents.
Absolutely. We are building and building, and while we don't want to overwhelm parents, we want them to have resources at their fingertips. And I would add that we're also being really careful about when we're providing links to websites and other resources and online or virtual opportunities that are beyond what we have in Henrico, or pointing to resources that we're being very mindful and using a select few that we believe are proven to really serve students well. So I know you can check Pinterest, the internet, and there, you know, all kinds of suggestions out there, but I would encourage our families, again, to visit our site, look at our recommendations, because the central team has been really thoughtful in collaborating with the teachers in our division about what they find is most successful with students and aligns really well to our curriculum and are things that are often used in the classroom, and that provides that continuity for students when they, as they've left us and for when they return.
Ms. Kinsella?
Yes, I have a question regarding communication and questions during this time. I know that board members have certainly been hearing from their communities, but for those, and today we probably have a larger audience than we normally would, so I just thought it would be important to highlight if community members have questions, where should they direct them at this time? Should they direct them to their principals at their schools, whichever school that may be, or to us as board members? If you could give a little guidance.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I think that's an excellent topic, and would say there's probably not one answer because it depends on what the question is, but just would say that the channels of communication that had been open during the school being open and before the closure still remain. And so our principals and teachers are monitoring their email, and so if it's something school site site-specific, even though you may not be on-site. If it's something particular to teacher interaction, a question about something that had been happening during the school year, those are always best directed to the school. And as I said, our administrative teams are still monitoring email. And so certainly community concerns, I know our board is phenomenal about keeping on top of those and sharing those with staff as we can assist in answering that. Superintendent email remains open as it's advertised on the website, and I read those daily, and so we try to endeavor to respond quickly as well. So we have appreciated those who have been in contact and would encourage you to keep doing so through those channels. And then, for larger concerns that might be specific to COVID-19 health questions, some of those have come to us. We've pointed those back to the hotline that's advertised on our site. That is a general government hotline, but really specific to health concerns and questions that might be more specifically related to that. And would say that as we may have some more options available, and we'll advertise those as they become open for maybe support that during the extended closure with virtual learning.
Thank you so much, board members, for your participation, your questions, and your concerns, and your input. Thank you so much, Dr. Tigan and Dr. Cashwell as well. We want to progress now through our agenda. The next item is our entering into closed session. Closed session is a closed meeting for discussions of matters covered under items A1, A2, and A8 of Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia. And the purpose is the assignment, the appointment, performance, disciplining, and release of contract for specific school board employees. Secondly, the admission and discipline of specific students, and consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters related to holding electronic meetings of the school board pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3708.2. Board members, you've heard the recommendation. Can I entertain a motion? It's been moved by Mrs. Shea. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Kinsella, that we enter into closed session. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, the ayes have it. We are now in closed session. Thank you. We want to reconvene the Thursday, March 26, 2020 work session of the Henrico County Public Schools Board. We want to first certify that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting in which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed session were heard, discussed, or considered by the county school board of Henrico County, Virginia. Is there a motion to certify the closed session?
So moved.
It's been moved by Ms. Kinsella. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Shea. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. We have now certified the closed session. Madam Superintendent?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the first item, I am asking your consideration for approval for the readmission of student case number 16-17-S-1, with the name of the student, of course, being protected under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act.
School board members, you have heard the motion. You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent. Is there a motion to accept her recommendation?
So moved.
Been moved by Mrs. Atkins. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Kinsella. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have it. Her recommendation is approved.
Thank you. Next, I'm seeking your approval for the readmission of student case number 18-19-S-18.
Is there a motion to approve and to accept the recommendation of our superintendent? If so, I'm entertaining it.
So moved.
It's been moved by Ms. Shea. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Atkins. All those in favor would signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same right. The ayes have it. The motion is carried.
Thank you. Also seeking your approval for the readmission of student case number 18-19-S-21.
You have heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Been moved by Mrs. Shea. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Kinsella. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, the ayes have it, the motion carries.
Thank you. Next, I'm recommending that the school board accept the $500 award from the New York Life Foundation to Short Pump Middle School.
Mrs. Ogburn, did you hear that?
I did. I'll make the motion.
Ms. Ogburn has made the motion to accept the recommendation from the superintendent. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Atkins. All those in favor, would you signify by saying aye?
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it, the motion is carried.
Thank you. Next item, 6.01, is related to a comprehensive redistricting update, and the update information is minimal here, given that there have not been any developments in redistricting since we were last together, and you received an update from Mr. Sorensen when he indicated that meetings that were imminent of the committee had been postponed given the COVID-19 health crisis. So I share that as the only update and offer an opportunity to hear from the board on this topic.
I can start to my left. Any questions, concerns, Ms. Atkins?
I do want to make a comment for those that are listening and spent a tremendous amount of time in helping us in our decision-making process, as we all have looked at numbers and heard feedback from many individuals. I want folks to know that all the feedback and all the work that you've done thus far is appreciated. And again, these are unprecedented times, and we are going to collectively as a board, I believe all of my colleagues agree, that we are still learning how to move forward. But the good news is that all the feedback that has been provided, whether you're on the committee or whether you showed up at the monthly meetings or whether you use the other method of supplying your thoughts through either forms, know that we are informed. We are informed from facts. We are informed from the compassion that each of us felt as you spoke here. And I just wanted to share that because it's important for all of you to hear that as we move forward, whether the committee meets again, whether we have another monthly meeting or not, where you can come and share your voice, know that you have been heard over the past couple months. Thank you.
Yep. Ms. Shea?
Thank you. I second what Ms. Atkins had said about just the tremendous work that the committee has done, as well as our staff, the tremendous amount of feedback we have gotten from the community, that we have each poured over hundreds of emails, met with constituents, and listened attentively. There is so much information and so much data that we have poured over. I will voice that I do have a concern about drawing this process out an additional 6 or more months. This whole process has caused a lot of discord and a lot of disruption. I think families want to know where their children are going to go to school. And so if we are going to move forward, that redistricting would take place in the fall of 2021. I think it's imperative that we move forward and make that decision. If the board feels like to scrap the whole process, that's another discussion, but if we're going to move forward on the timeline for redistricting to start when it was slated to start, I would like to see us come up with a way to make that decision so that our families don't continue to be in limbo when this is already such an uncertain time for so many other reasons. I know families have reached out and they want to know where their children are going to be going to school.
Thank you so much. Ms. Ogburn, do you want to add some comments?
I do. I will echo what Marcy and Alicia said. I think it's important that we acknowledge the committee has done a great job, but I think under the circumstances, they're not able to meet, obviously. So we have 2 options in front of us that the committee has developed, and it would seem to me that the more judicious thing to do would be to let those 2 maps stand as they are and go ahead and move those to the board and staff to continue to work on as we can under the circumstances, and try to make a decision based on those two maps the committee developed by, our meeting in May or June, as we had hoped to do. I agree with Marcy. I think putting this off to the fall just is problematic in a lot of ways. People want to know where their kids are going to school, but it's more than that. In the fall, kids will be making decisions for the next year, looking into courses they might take, that kind of thing. That varies by school. But I think dragging this out is not in the best interest of our community. It has been a long haul so far, and I think we have two maps. It's time to let the committee just turn them over to the board and staff and let us move forward with what we've got.
Thank you, Ms. Ogburn. Ms. Kinsella?
Yes, I'd like to echo the sentiments of Ms. Atkins, Mrs. Shea, and Mrs. Ogburn. First, I'd like to thank again the staff and the committee who have worked tirelessly for 6 months prior to this health crisis and have produced two viable options. I just want to thank you for your commitment to the process. And at this time, I believe that, firstly, redistricting falls under board responsibility. And I do believe it's our duty to continue the committee's work and try to bring about some resolution, reducing stress during what I believe is already a stressful time for so many of our community members. So I support what Mrs. Ogburn said regarding the two options. I believe we have plenty of feedback on those options. We've had survey after survey, email after email. We've had public hearings. And I think we have all the information we need from those two options to make the decision that we need to make as a board in May.
Reverend Cooper, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in one more thing based on what Ms. Kinsella said.
Yes, ma'am.
I think one thing we have to remember is, yes, we do have two options, but the committee was just most recently working on a list of things that they knew they wanted to continue to attack in these two maps. That's also direction that we can use to continue their work with Matt Cropper and finish it up. I think we just can't be, I know the committee might say, but wait a minute, we had a list. We had 14 things we were getting ready to vote on and give our opinion on. But those things we can take up and get that part of it done.
I want to also chime in, but Marcy, I saw your hand up. I'll let you go
okay?
forward. Yes.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Atkins. I would like to propose that I agree with Ms. Ogburn that we have two maps that the committee has developed. I would like to propose that if we move forward with those two maps, that each of the 5 of us contact the committee members that are associated with the schools in our district so that they can give a one-on-one debrief to each of us about their thoughts and what they think is unresolved so that they can kind of have a completion on their work and that they can pass it off to us that we can run with.
Ms. Atkins?
And I would just want to say that I completely support the recommendations provided by Mrs. Kinsella, Mrs. Ogburn, as well as Mrs. Shea. I think it's a wonderful idea to contact those on the committee so that they can provide whatever information they did not receive the opportunity to. I will share with you that I have already contacted the individuals on my committee as I sort of began and to realize that we are going to have to move this forward. And I do like the idea of looking at the two viable maps that are already in place and amending those based on the information and conversations that we will receive when we contact committee members, and also amending them based on how our community feels and the feedback that we've received. We received a ton of information, and I think everyone up here is armed with what they need to move forward. So I do agree and support what's been shared.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to add that I support the reaching out to the committee members to wrap up any loose ends or comments that they may like to put forth, especially after last week's announcement about the change in capacity. I'd like to know committee members' specific feedback, especially in the Brooklyn district, as to what their thoughts are and how they feel about that before decisions are made. Thank you.
Well, thank you for you all's comments. My comment is a little different. I feel personally the business of the school division is moving forward. It's looking a little different, but we're moving forward as a division. And I concur. We're so grateful and appreciative of all the persons that have volunteered time and given input and energy to this process. And I want to say first and foremost that redistricting is important. It is imperative. It is important. And investment so far in terms of time, money, and emotion needs to result in an outcome that best serves the needs of our community. But I think that we've got to ask ourselves a key question. The world has been turned upside down. And the question I raised is now the right time to proceed. There's so much uncertainty in the region. People are scared. Why we move forward with the comprehensive redistricting and add to the unimaginable stress levels that some families are facing. I suggest, as far as my thought, and we're all entitled to our thoughts and whatever the consensus of the board is, it is, but I believe that it should be dialed back so that we can have a targeted approach. We know that we need to fill holiday, for example, and we can further identify most overcrowded situations and address specific issues. People have so much on their minds right now. I just don't feel comfortable personally moving forward when our community would be extremely limited in staying involved in the way we promised they would be. So that's kind of my perspective, so I'm glad that we all got to share our opinions today. So any other comments for redistricting? Okay. That being said, Madam Superintendent.
All right. The next item on the agenda, I am seeking your approval to award a contract to Sherry Bakert in the amount of $108,230 for the external audit of the school activity funds pursuant to RFP 19-1962-12CHS. The contract to audit the activity funds at each of our elementary schools, secondary schools, technical centers, and program centers is for 3 fiscal years ending June 30, 2020, 2021, and 2022, and provides the right to negotiate the renewal for 2 additional one-year terms at a price which shall not increase more than 3% or the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, known as CPIU, average for the most recent 12 months available at the end of each fiscal year, whichever is the lesser. Again, seeking your approval to award that contract to Sherry Bakert.
Thank you so much, Madam Superintendent. You have heard the recommendation, board members. Is there a motion to
So moved.
Been moved by Ms. Atkins. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Shea. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same right. Ayes have it. Motion is approved.
Thank you. Next item, I'm requesting the school board award construction contracts for the HVAC replacements to Old Dominion Mechanical LLC in the amount of $119,975 at Rolfe Middle School, and to the Service Mechanical Incorporated, or to Service Mechanical Incorporated in the amount of $278,000 at Wilder Middle School.
Thank you so much, Madam Superintendent. Is there a motion to approve her recommendation?
So moved.
Been moved by Mrs. Atkins. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Kinsella. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same right. Ayes have it. The motion is carried.
Thank you. Next, I'm requesting that the school board approve a proposal from Finley Asphalt and Sealing Incorporated in the amount of $163,214 for the pavement improvements at the student parking area of Godwin High School.
You have heard the motion, members of the board. Is there a motion to accept her recommendation?
So moved.
Been moved by Mrs. Shea. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Atkins. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. The motion is carried.
Thank you. The following items are consent items and therefore can be taken in a block, and so I'm requesting your approval of the following: the acceptance of monthly financial statement and budgetary status report for the month ending February 29th, 2020, acceptance of the monthly financial statement for school nutrition services for the month ending February 29, 2020, approval of personnel items, and the adoption of the VSBA Business Honor Roll resolutions.
Thank you so much, Madam Superintendent. Board members, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 items before us, which are consent items. We want to vote on them as a block. May I entertain a motion to accept her recommendation for the consent items, please?
So moved.
Been moved by Mrs. Shea. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Ogborn. All those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. The consent items motion has been approved.
Thank you for your approval, and I would just note for our viewing public that the adoption of the VSBA Business Honor Roll designates Bon Secours, DPR Construction, and James River Exteria as local businesses that are members of the Virginia School Boards Association Business Honor Roll. And that concludes items for the superintendent.
Thank you so much, Madam Superintendent. Board members, the next item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. May I please entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Been moved by Mrs. Atkins. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Kinsella. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Next on our agenda is unfinished business items. Do we have any unfinished business?
I do.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Atkins.
Thank you. So at the top of our meeting, we had an opportunity to address COVID-19. Thank you. At the top of our meeting, all of us had an opportunity to talk about COVID-19 in a variety of ways. And I wanted to just take a moment to address all of you out there that are watching us as we work. And just remind you that not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. We are human, and we are facing uncertainty, anxiety, and abundance of emotion. I remain firm when I say to you that this too shall pass. As our educational systems and leaders learn the new normal, please have that internal conversation with yourself. Ask yourself, how am I handling it? Are you forging new ways to communicate? Are these external factors changing your perspective on life? Please feel comfortable having these internal conversations, because when these unprecedented times pass, when these moments become history, our children will become stronger, because collectively we are demonstrating examples of kindness, patience, leadership, and we will move forward in navigating in these new normals. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Atkins. Does anyone else have any unfinished business? Hearing none, is there any new business?
Yes, Reverend Cooper?
Yes, ma'am. Is your mic on?
Yes. I'd like to ask the superintendent if she would give the board an update on the budget, please.
Certainly, and I'm assuming when you're speaking to the budget, you may be wondering about any impacts to our current fiscal year budget, 1920 budget related to the COVID-19 crisis and how that may impact our future proposed budget for fiscal year 2021.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll start by addressing an update for our current year budget, and certainly the impact to a number of areas of our budget currently related to this health crisis will be unknown, but I will tell you that we are tracking all expenses related to COVID-19, so whether it was thermometer purchase, anything we may be doing to remediate students, assistance with devices for virtual instruction and that sort of thing, so that should there be any opportunities for stimulus funds or financial aid, we're prepared to do that. We're also working with county purchasing to look at all of our outstanding purchase orders and active procurements to see if there are any that may be canceled. You know, we certainly want to be fiscally prudent during this time of closure, and so where there are items that were underway for purchase that would no longer be essential or needed with students not in our buildings, We're certainly canceling those, looking at any contracts as well for anything from instructional contracts to trash pickup and how those might be limited to potentially recoup. And we anticipate that there could be some savings in things like vehicle fuel, vehicle maintenance, and that sort of thing. So we're certainly tracking those expenses and trying to look at those trends as we face the weeks ahead of us. But again, I would say that some of the bigger unknowns as related to our current budget would be things like sales tax. So sales tax comes to us in increments, and it's based on prior month sales. So for example, now we're in a period where February sales tax would be in play, and that was actually up 7.4% over fiscal year 18-19, so that's a positive. And so we budgeted a 4.4% increase for the fiscal year. It's hard to, again, gauge the immediate impacts to sales tax, but where we likely may see some declines would be in those April through June collections. But again, that's not something we can anticipate exactly today, but we're going to keep our eye on that. Also, I would speak to school nutrition. While that's not part of our general operating fund, it's its own sustaining fund. We are now up to about a loss in revenue of about $125,000 a day. And so while we still have staff working, the meal sales that we typically count on while school is open are not in place. So that's something we have an eye on very closely. And while we have a fund balance to meet immediate needs within our school nutrition area. We'll keep tracking those. We have heard from county government in relation to our current budget and the one that we've proposed that, as would be expected during a case of unknown circumstances with the financial climate, that for the current fiscal year, we put a pause on filling vacancies that aren't essential. And so certainly as things may come up and we're not in session that we wouldn't need to fill, we wouldn't do so. That does not preclude us for going ahead and hiring for positions that would already be in our current operating budget as it would continue next year. So that it's clear there's not a freeze on us moving forward to staff for our teacher positions and administrator positions that exist today that we know will be needed next school year. As far as the upcoming budget or the budget that this school board voted on as a proposed budget that went to the county, we understand obviously their budget deliberations have been prolonged given the situation, and they're taking a closer look at anything from employee compensation to the CIP and construction projects, and so want to make sure that they're acting in a manner that's certainly responsible and fiscally responsive to the unknown circumstances related to the future. But I can tell you that as of today, we continue to plan our budget based on the calc tool that the state has provided us. The governor could issue amendments, but we've not been given any news that school budgets are where those cuts would be. So in our planning for next year, that doesn't change the calc tool as we've used it. I also received information today from VDOE that we're soon to be informed of a federal stimulus process. So education stimulus has been approved with significant funds to be directed to Virginia and directed to localities for school use. These would be funds that would be directed to things like summer school, extra pay for teachers, drivers through those summer periods where we're handling learning loss. Again, this would be one-time money, not the kind of thing that would take care of ongoing operational expenses, but that money may carry out over a few years because our remediation efforts and efforts to fill gaps using this stimulus funds may take place through and past next school year. So we'll continue to monitor that situation. Any specific questions related to the budget that I didn't hit in that update?
As we look to some of the previous priorities announced for the fall, given what you just stated about how COVID-19 has definitely impacted what we foresee as our budget, should we expect to still see our 40 counselors or our 15 reading specialists? I mean, how would we choose which the priorities are. Do we have any idea of if we will or will not see those?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And so preliminarily, what we've been told by county budget staff is that, the intention would be, given the current financial uncertainty, that we move forward with what would be considered a flat budget. So operating on what we're operating on this year, with the potential to look at any of those additional budget asks to deem what may be essential as they're able to handle those. And I think that would be some discussion we'd have as a board, and certainly making some recommendations around what priority areas are. Certainly you bring up the counselors. We know the significant need we have there. Social, emotional needs of our students are probably more even exacerbated now that this health crisis is in place. The reading specialists, for example, knowing that we'll have a lot of remediation and skill building to do, particularly where there will be literacy gaps from a number of months of lost instruction. So certainly I think there's an opportunity for us to be clear to the county government where we see some priority needs. They did indicate when it came to employee compensation that the VRS and health insurance increase would be something, along with the flat budget, we could expect to be taken care of. But that we, when it comes to the proposed 3% increase, that was something that is tabled for now as they continue to look at what it might be for employees. There was some talk, I understand, of quarterly appropriations, that as funds are available, they begin to phase that in. But we'll certainly stay tuned to updates as they come.
I have one last question. As to the career ladders, are we thinking that that would be off the table now too with the flat budget? Yes?
I mean, certainly, while we had a number of priority items, and I think everything that was on the budget that we brought over to the board, we would see as essential, or we surely wouldn't have placed it there, right? And we know that career ladders are a crucial piece of what we're doing to address employee compensation as well as recruitment and retention. But as far as what an approved budget by county government will look like based on their funding situation, as I said, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to weigh in and prioritize once we know what kind of funding beyond the flat budget might be available to us.
Quick question, Dr. Cashwell, since we're kind of in that vein, has the state superintendent given us any guidelines with our special education program as far as what the expectations are, how we can serve that population of our student body?
So the VDOE's issued some guidance related to continuity of instruction, and certainly that is during this time of closure that we work to, again, make sure that our students know that we're connected to them, that those relationships we have fostered continue, but that we allow them to engage in previously learned content and be engaged in learning, and so we've certainly done that as a school division. But when it comes to positioning ourselves to reestablish beginning new instruction in some way, virtual or otherwise, we're certainly heeding the guidance of both the federal and state level guidance related to making sure that we do so in a manner that's equitable and accessible for all students. And so we continue to work through plans for what that might look like when we resume instruction.
Thank you so much. Anyone else have any questions? Ms. Ogburn, do you have anything else for the superintendent?
No, I don't. Thank y'all very much for understanding my calling in.
Well, you stay safe and healthy, huh?
Thank you.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
too.
That being said, no other new business to present. Before we adjourn, I want to announce our upcoming meetings. April 23rd, 2020, 2 p.m. work session, 6:30 p.m. monthly meeting, New Bridge Learning Center Auditorium. And I just want to state that meeting times may be adjusted as needed. No other business. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.